Hi YouTube fam, welcome to Talking Crime. My name is Gina Marie Bova and this is where I like to come to discuss solved and unsolved true crime cases, true crime facts and stats, and missing person cases that I don't feel have gotten enough attention from mainstream media. If you're interested in everything true crime, then you have definitely come to the right place. I hope you will choose to subscribe to this channel, and if you click that little bell next to the subscribe button, YouTube's going to notify you whenever I upload new content. Quick warning before we get started. My videos are not made for children. They're not made for people with weak stomachs or people who are easily offended. Look, I'm talking about true crime cases here, so most of the photos and details and language that I'll be using is going to be graphic in nature. Therefore, viewers' discretion is most definitely advised. Welcome, welcome. I hope everybody is doing well. So I had a whole script written for today's video, but I did change it last minute. See, I had been on social media as usual, and I came across a post that was written by an anonymous user. And she was asking for advice because she is currently in a domestic violence situation. Her post was absolutely heartbreaking. I've been in her shoes, so I decided to go ahead and leave her a comment. And as I often do, I scrolled through other people's comments that were left for her. I was shocked by how many people think that domestic violence is enjoyed, chosen, even deserved by the person who's being abused. I was irate reading those comments. There was this one that asked, well, what are you doing to piss him off? What the fuck? Another one said, walk out. It's that easy. That's not just minimizing the situation that she's in, but it's showing how fucking ignorant people can be to the realities of domestic violence. And that is why I decided to make this here video. And since not everybody that is watching at this moment is going to stay until the end, I want to mention now this. If you are being abused, I have resources and information for you in the description section of this video. There is hope. There is help. Please don't give up. Okay, now it's time for story time. Milda Rivera was 57 years old at the time of her passing, but she didn't just pass away. She was murdered, and like so many others, she was killed by somebody who claimed to love her. Milda was a mother, a grandmother, and a friend to many. She's dearly loved and dearly missed. She was a retired nurse's assistant who loved the color red, apples, and cooking homemade Spanish food for her family. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot on the internet regarding who Milda Rivera was other than a victim. Milda met Pedro Grajales on social media. They began a relationship. I was unable to find exactly when they started that relationship, but I did see that they had dated on and off for a few years. Her adult daughters had stated that they felt really bad vibes coming from Pedro when they first met him, but their mom seemed happy with him, and that's what mattered. Pedro even sat them down once and told them how much he cared for their mom, how much he loved their mom, and how he would never do anything to hurt their mom. But nothing could have been further from the truth. The relationship between Pedro and Milda was tumultuous at best. It's said that Pedro was very jealous and controlling. He would go through Milda's phone and social media accounts and delete contacts of the people that he didn't want her to talk to. He began hurling accusations at her, accusations that she was cheating. He would question where she was going, with who, why it took so long when she went there. It caused many arguments, and Milda broke up with Pedro many times, but he always seemed to know just what to say to convince her to come back. Milda was a very trusting and loving woman who just wanted to be loved. She wanted to believe that he would change. Sometime during early April of this year, 2023, while snooping through Milda's things as usual, Pedro found something that convinced him that he had been right all along. something that proved to him that Nilda was secretly seeing another man. Now, I have seen no evidence that Nilda was cheating on him. In cases like this, far too often, people like Pedro will believe things that simply are not true. Some accuse their partners of cheating when in reality, it's the accuser that's the one that's cheating. Other times, the accuser has extremely low self-esteem. He has a history of the partners that had cheated on him in the past, and so cheating is expected from anybody that they date. Many times they convince themselves that it's true, and the accusations become daily events. True or not, it is real in their mind, and nothing can be said or done to convince them otherwise. I honestly have no idea if Nilda had been sexually active with anyone other than Pedro, and honestly, I really don't care. She and Pedro were not married. He could have left if he didn't like whatever it was he thought she was doing. And even if they were married, he had no right to control her. Nobody owns anybody else. Right or wrong, she deserved happiness. And what she didn't deserve is what would happen next. Jumping forward now, though still in Hartford, Connecticut, Sunday, April 15th, approximately 3:20 p.m., a man calmly walked into the Hartford Police Department. He was covered in blood, but had no injuries of his own. He walked up to the first officer that he noticed wasn't busy and proceeded to show that officer his phone. On it was displayed an image of a severely battered and bloodied woman who had numerous visible gaping wounds. The man identified himself as Pedro Grajales. The officer asked Pedro if he knew who assaulted the woman in the picture and where that woman was at this time. Pedro straight up confessed that he's the one who did it, and then he said that her body was sitting in a car that was parked outside of the police station right in the parking lot. Pedro was immediately taken into custody, and another officer had led him into an interrogation room, while the original officer that he spoke to radioed for medical assistance and ran toward the parking lot. He located the car and inside found Milda Rivera. Emergency medical arrived within minutes and raced her to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. The doctor said that she had been stabbed at least 25 times about the face, head, neck, and chest, and her arms were covered in defensive stab wounds. Back at the station, Pedro, still calm as hell, explained that 3 days prior, he had found proof that Nilda was being unfaithful, and he had been planning her death ever since. First, his plan was to hold her hostage and torture her for days, if not months on end, but then he settled on a different plan. One more to the point. The morning of the 15th, Pedro slipped a knife into his pocket, walked over to Nilda, and invited her to go eat lunch with him at McDonald's. They went through the drive-thru, got their food, ate in the parking lot, and then Pedro drove over to an adjacent parking lot that was abandoned. The store that it belonged to was closed, so there were no cars parked there. He put his car into park, looked at Nilda, and before she could even say a word, he pounced on her. He began punching her about the face and body, and then pulled a knife from his pocket and began stabbing her. It was a very frenzied attack, and it was over as quickly as it had begun. And then he just sat back and watched her. He watched as she was gasping for air and bleeding out. He took pictures of her while she was dying. I can't imagine the horror and confusion that she felt on top of the pain and panic. I'm not even sure if he told her why he was doing this or if he said anything at all. He just sat there and waited and watched her until he was sure that she had taken her last breath. He said he had to wait until she was dead because he didn't want to take the chance that somebody might be able to save her life. He was sure that she was gone, and then he started the car. He texted the pictures of her dying that he had taken to who he called her new boyfriend, and he drove himself to the police station to turn himself in. Pedro has not been sentenced in this case yet. Remember, it just happened last month. I'll be shocked if he doesn't plead guilty, and I'll be even more shocked if he's ever released. He does have a $3 million bond, but hopefully he will never find a way to come up with that money. He is currently awaiting his next court appearance, which is in just a couple of days. May 5th is when it's scheduled for. I will update you guys on this case as updates become available. My heart goes out to her family and loved ones. And now for the next case. In late 2001 or early 2002, Lois and Christopher Schmidt got married. I'm just going to call him Chris from now on throughout this story because it's just easier for me. Anyways, when they got married, Lois and her 5-year-old son from a previous relationship, whose name was Jonathan Vetrano, moved into Chris's home, which was located on Nordello Drive in Deltona, Florida. Unfortunately, it didn't take very long for their relationship to unravel and become extremely toxic. It's said that Chris became controlling and abusive, and about a year after Lois moved in with Chris, she gave birth to their daughter, but by then, even a new baby could not fix their relationship. It couldn't bring the couple back together, and Lois wanted out. Court documents show that in the beginning of June 2003, Lois petitioned the court in Volusia County, Florida, for a protection order. She stated that Chris was abusive to her. She said he had done things such as spit in her face, pushed her against walls, screamed in her face, and hurled obscenities at her, most often in front of her son. He would threaten her. She said she had only lived in Florida for about a year. She had no family or friends to turn to for help or support, and she needed protection. Lois told the court that Chris had a concealed weapons permit and that he owned 3 handguns, a rifle, and 2 BB guns that she knew of. She also, in the petition, said, quote, "I don't trust him. I don't want to be alone with him. I'm afraid for the safety of my children and myself," unquote. This petition was approved by the court. They approved the request for a protection order. Chris was granted temporary visitation rights, but the couple would have to address the custody issue at another time in front of a different judge during the divorce proceedings. And for now, Lois packed up her things, her children, and she moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where they would move in with her parents for the time being, so she could feel more safe and get back onto her feet. Chris filed for the divorce in August of 2003. Monday, June 28th, 2004, at 7:56 a.m., police were called to the 1100 block of Newcomb Road. The 911 caller reported hearing what she thought was gunshots coming from her neighbor's home and stated that one of the neighbors that lived there was laying in the front yard bleeding. Police, fire, and paramedics responded, and when they arrived on scene, they raced over to a man who was laying on the front lawn. He had been shot. He told rescuers that there were 2 more family members inside the home who had also been shot. The police entered the residence in search of the other victims, and while in there, they realized that a fire had been started as well. They found the 2 victims, and they were quickly removed from the burning home. Fire department rushed in, quickly put out that fire. Meanwhile, the paramedics examined the 2 that were pulled from the burning house, just realized that they had already succumbed to their injuries. They were both deceased. The man on the lawn was transported to a local hospital where he was treated and ultimately did survive his injuries. He had been shot 3 times. He was extremely lucky to have survived his injuries. This man was the brother of Lois Schmidt. The burning home belonged to his parents, and fortunately the parents were not home when the attack took place. The two deceased individuals were identified as 29-year-old Lois Schmidt and her 7-year-old son, Jonathan Vetrano. 2 dogs had also been shot. One survived, the other did not. Detectives were at a loss. The case went cold. It took over a decade before new information came to light that led to the arrest of a Richard Eugene Stoner. He was originally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and a count of attempted murder. But to escape the death penalty, Stoner made a deal. He said he would confess to everything that happened, and he would testify against the person who masterminded the plan. You see, Richard Stoner was married to Christopher Schmidt's first cousin. Remember that Chris was Lois Schmidt's estranged husband. They were going through a divorce at this time. Stoner admitted that Chris gave him $10,000 to kill Lois. The divorce was brutal, and Chris knew he was losing. He wanted Lois dead, plain and simple. He told Stoner his plan and sent him on his way. Stoner was told when to do it. He was told that she would be home alone. He was told there were no dogs in that home. It would be quick and easy in and out. So Stoner arrives, he sits outside, he's watching the house for about 45 minutes before he went in to make sure that she was alone, and he had to gather up some courage. The plan here was for him to enter through the garage, trip the power breaker, so that Lois would have to enter the garage to flip the breaker switch, and that's when Stoner would just shoot her and leave. He enters, as he was supposed to, trips the breaker. Lois does come in, but she's with her 7-year-old son. That threw Stoner off, and it made him pause to try and figure out what to do next. But then 2 dogs charged in as well. He got scared. He stood up, shot the dogs. Lois began to scream, and he shot her in the chest. Her son ran back into the house. Stoner followed him inside in time to see a man who was quickly entering the room from a side bedroom. It was Lois's brother. Stoner said he just wanted to disfigure him, so he shot him in the arm, shoulder, and cheek. Even after being shot 3 times, he managed to get outside and summon help. Inside, Stoner was not done. He saw that the little boy was frozen in fear on the couch. According to Stoner, he told the child to go on and get out of here, but the kid remained frozen. And so rather than have the kid's life be ruined by having seen what he saw, he killed his mom in front of him, his dogs got shot in front of him. Stoner decided to save him from all that suffering and a horrible life by walking up to him and shooting him point blank in the head, killing him instantly. He then poured some gas on the floor and started the house on fire. He escaped the scene before the police arrived. After taking his confession, police had Chris in Florida arrested and extradited to Virginia. 2 years go by. They're both still locked up. Both Stoner and Chris still in jail waiting for their hearings. But in 2021, Virginia abolished the death penalty, which made Stoner decide that he needed to file a motion with the court. He decided that he wanted to take back his guilty plea because the deal he made to escape the death penalty was no longer necessary since there was no death penalty anymore. His motion was granted. Stoner then told prosecutors he was not going to testify against Chris after all, and if they chose to call him as a witness anyway, he would plead the fifth, which means he would refuse to testify on the grounds that his testimony would incriminate himself. And yes, he has every right to do that. However, without his testimony, the prosecution did not have enough evidence to convict Chris, and so they cut him loose. And to this day, Christopher Schmidt is a free man. Look at this face, ladies. This is a ballless coward who abuses women and children and pays other pieces of shit to do his dirty work for him. Steer clear of this one. Stoner pled guilty in February of 2023 to aggravated murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated malicious wounding, burglary, conspiracy, arson of an occupied dwelling, 4 counts of using a firearm in the commission of a felony, and felonious torture and mutilation of a dog causing death. At sentencing, Stoner said this, quote, "This crime is so far outside of my character, it's hard for me to even comprehend that it was me. I feel horrible about this crime. I don't know what happened. It eats me alive," unquote. Well, fucking good. I hope that's true. I hope he is tortured every single goddamn day. I hope that their faces haunt him every fucking night for the rest of his putrid, worthless life. This piece of shit sitting there feeling sorry for himself. The judge also had a few words to say before handing down his sentence. He said on the record that Stoner's confession read like a horror story, that the maximum sentence he was allowed to give Stoner did not nearly add up to what he deserved. He also added this, quote, "These actions were so evil and so egregious, and the loss so incalculable. I have never seen anything as bad, as evil, and as disgusting as these actions were, Mr. Stoner," unquote. He then sentenced Richard Eugene Stoner to serve the maximum penalty allowed, which is 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 63 years. He will never get out. To me, as bad as what he did was, Chris Schmidt is worse. He is a despicable waste of space who should be in prison right alongside Stoner, getting his prison justice too, until his last breath. And hopefully, one day, his day will come. It is not always easy to tell at the beginning of a relationship if it's going to become abusive. In fact, many abusers seem absolutely perfect on the surface. They're the dream person that you've always looked for in the early stages, anyway. Possessive and controlling behaviors don't always appear overnight. Instead, they usually emerge and intensify as the relationship grows and time goes on. Oftentimes, when the abuser exhibits abusive behavior and can see that you're about to leave, they'll start crying or apologizing and promising it'll never happen again. They make excuses for their behavior, and they use the knowledge that you love them against you. These are all forms of manipulation, and please, please don't be conned. It will happen again, and it does get worse. If you're beginning to feel as if your partner or a loved one's partner is becoming abusive, there are some behaviors that you can look out for. These are called red flags. If you're experiencing one or more of them in your relationship, get out. Or at the very least, contact a helpline and talk to somebody about what is going on. Here's a list of red flags to look for. Embarrassing you or putting you down in front of others. Looking at you or acting in ways that terrify you. Controlling who you see, where you go, or what you do. Keeping you or discouraging you from seeing your friends or family, talking bad about them. Taking your money, refusing to give you money for expenses. Preventing you from making your own decisions. Telling you that you're a bad parent or threatening to harm or take away your children. Preventing you from working or attending school or bettering yourself in any way. Not letting you wear makeup or dress the way you wish. Blaming you for the abuse or acting like it's not even happening at all and it's all in your head. Making you feel crazy. Making you second guess. Destroying your property or threatening to hurt or kill your pets. Intimidating you with guns, knives, or other weapons. Shoving you, slapping you, choking you, or hitting you, attempting to stop you from pressing charges, threatening to commit suicide because of something that you've done, or if you leave them, they'll kill themselves, threatening to hurt or kill you, pressuring you to have sex when you don't want to, or do things sexually that you're not comfortable with, pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol, preventing you from using birth control, or pressuring you to become pregnant when you're not ready. And there's more. Domestic violence doesn't look the same in every relationship because every relationship is different. But one thing that most abusive relationships have in common is that the abusive partner does many different kind of things to have more power and control over their partner. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in these United States. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men have experienced severe intimate partner physical violence. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner. Unfortunately, I could not find the statistic as it related to men. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner. Each day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to a domestic violence hotline nationwide. Only 34% of people who are injured by their intimate partner receives medical care for their injuries. What occupation do you think has the highest rate of abusers? And the answer is police officers. At least 40% of families of police officers have experienced some type of domestic violence at the hands of the officer. So who are they supposed to call for help? These are the same people that are out there arresting people for doing the same shit that they're doing behind closed doors. They're out there arresting victims, out there taking the abuser's side. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that all officers are abusers or corrupt. Even one is too many. 40% is fucking absurd. And people ask, why do victims stay? Statistics show that women are 70 times more likely to be killed during the 2 weeks after leaving an abusive situation than at any other time during the relationship. There is also the fear that their family, friends, even pets will be harmed if they leave. And this fear is real. It's paralyzing. And most times, the abuser makes sure to consistently remind them of what they will do and how easy it would be for them to do it. Well, why not just call police? Well, I've already given one example of why not. But there are others. Who's going to protect them when their abuser gets back out? They come out angrier, vindictive, pissed off that they got turned in. It's easy to say somebody can hide, but what about their family, their friends, their pets? The fear of what's going to happen to them is usually more intense than the fear of getting hurt themselves. They don't want to see somebody they love be hurt because of a choice they made to get into a relationship with this monster. What if they have nowhere to go? What if they have no money to get there? Usually abusers control every aspect of the victim's life, which includes money. It includes isolating them from family and friends too. They feel completely alone. They feel helpless. Sometimes officers will show up and just separate them and then leave. Other times, they will take the abuser to jail, but the abuser gets out the next day, and then what? Other times yet, they'll take the victim and the abuser both to jail until they get it sorted out. Mutual combat or whatever. Now what happens to the pets and the children and when they're both arrested? CPS? Kill shelters? There's just so many different variables. Most people don't understand. And they won't understand until they become a victim or a loved one does. Looking at those statistics that I just said, there's a very high likelihood that we will all at least know somebody who has been, is currently, or will become a victim of domestic violence. It's about power and control. And if we know the warning signs, We know what to do if we see them. Maybe we could stop these assholes in their tracks. And I want everyone that's in an abusive situation and watching this today, I want you to know that there are people who have been where you are and have gotten out. Hell, I'm living proof that you can get out. And you do need to get out. But you need to do it safely, and you need to do it the smart way. Okay? And so I am putting some resources in the description box of this video for you. If none of those will work for you, please comment a star in this video comment section or the comment section of any of my videos. And I will do everything in my power to help you get help and to help you get out. You're not alone. A better life is waiting for you, and you are worth it. You are worth it. This isn't your fault. Now, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join me today. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I'm out of here. This was a taxing one. I hope to see you all back here really soon. And until then, y'all stay safe out there.